Welcome, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara and Good Morning, Mike. Hey, I thought I'd stick as a dancing skeleton and say welcome to everybody. And if you're on YouTube, oh, okay, this is where that gets a bit awkward. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, right? And if you're on Facebook, like and follow. All right, so you can follow our page on Facebook every weekday morning, and we thank you for being with us. Hey, this is Talking Niagara, and we are welcome to Halloween. It's Spooky Friday.
Yes, Spooky Friday. And that's because it's Halloween. I hope like lousy weather for the kids. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. I hope it cleans up. I do hope it cleans up.
But this is my memory of Halloween when I was a kid. It was always a night like this.
Spooky, spooky and wet.
Wet, cool, rainy.
But doesn't wetness add to the spookiness of it?
I suppose so, that because it adds more darkness, it blocks out the moon if there is any. So anyway, I just hope the wee ones don't get too cold before they make it to a few houses or not.
Yeah. Okay, so first things first, US strikes on alleged drug boats in and kills 14 people in the Pacific. This is a story was left over from yesterday.
Yeah, it's highly controversial what the Americans are doing right now. They've first of all they've targeted Venezuela, and of course, what we have there is a dictator in Venezuela, sort of the heir apparent to Hugo Chavez, but he has persistently held on to power there despite all of the problems that
Yeah.
he's caused, and as fact of the matter is, the Nobel Peace Prize was won by his opposition leader, the main opposition to Maduro. Now, why is the United States striking boats in the Caribbean? There is a
Pacific, not Caribbean.
well, that one was the Pacific, but most of the other ones were in the
Yeah.
Caribbean, right? Off
Yeah.
the coast of
Oh yeah,
Venezuela.
they've been but there's more opportunities in the Caribbean than there really are in the Pacific, right? There's more islands, there's more close proximity to other countries.
Well, there's more. Most of the drug trade that gets into the United States from South America goes along the Pacific coast. So most of the cocaine, and it's mostly cocaine. The the uh, the president has a lot of problems with fentanyl, but fentanyl is not the big killer or fentanyl is the big killer in the United States, but it doesn't come from Venezuela by and large, and it does not come from Colombia by and large. So the boats that they're hitting are ostensibly drug boats that are containing cocaine. The fentanyl, which is much more of a problem in that comes from mostly from Mexico, is the biggest problem. But he can't seem to attack them with the Trump administration can't attack them. But what is it really all about? First of all, they're hitting these drug boats. They could just have easily have probably pulled them over
Yeah.
and basically intercepted them and intercepted the drug traffickers on those boats. And I have no doubt that most of the ones they've hit have had drugs in them. The problem is the people who are riding are getting killed here are very low level drug smugglers. They're the guys that they hire to do the dangerous work for probably not much more money than they were making as fishermen or whatever else they did.
Yeah.
And when the United States did bomb these, and they've had 3 survivors of the bombing of these boats, they don't take them into custody. They don't interrogate them. They don't bring them back for for any kind of judicial process, they repatriate them back to the country they come from.
Oh,
and which means they don't want the story of these
so
particular.
they're not chasing down their bosses or anything like that.
Yeah, so they ostensibly they could get a lot of information out of these people, but they don't bother doing that, which makes it very suspicious that they don't want whatever information these fellas have to offer to come out. But most of the time they know they're very low level individuals, probably very poor people trying to make some big bucks on the cocaine trafficking thing. One of the guys was a fisherman, and whether or not he was running cocaine or not, they probably couldn't get much information from him anyway. But the fact of the matter is they repatriated him. This is supposed to be, they were willing to kill him, but decided that he wasn't worth taking into custody, which is very confusing. But the real story is regime change in Venezuela, because whether it's cocaine or fentanyl, very little of what is coming out of Venezuela gets into the United States. Most of the drug traffic comes through Colombia and the Western Seaboard, and probably most of those boats that they intercepted were drugs meant for other places, not the United States, because the cocaine trafficking is all over the world. Apparently, one of the boats they hit, they felt that most of that would have gone to Africa, of all places, because there's demand there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the military presence there, the incredible military presence, they don't need that size military presence, the naval presence in the Caribbean to do what they're doing. They could easily do it with a fraction of the forces they have there and do it just as effectively. It puts out the suspicion that it's regime change. And why would they want regime change? Is because China is in big in Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest reserves of oil on the earth, although it's the heavy crude type that we have in Canada. The refineries in the southern United States in Texas were built primarily to take Venezuelan oil at a time when the United States wasn't producing enough of its own.
Yeah.
They felt that Venezuelan oil was the closest, and they made particular refineries to refine Venezuelan heavy crude. Since then, however, a lot of the Canadian heavy crude has gone down there instead. Not only do they have the world's largest reserves of oil, they also have the refining capability. The United States has the refining capability to make use of it. So if they get a regime change, they can start to use that oil. But the biggest problem is China's presence. China gets an enormous amount of its oil from Venezuela and has put a lot of money into Venezuela, infrastructure and all other things. So I have a feeling that, and I'm not the only one, that the United States, a lot of this is trumped up in order for them to facilitate a regime change if they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they want, this is a strong message to China too.
Why is there a military presence? Clearly, they want a regime change. The weirdest thing is about that, of course, is that in the past, many US presidents have made noise about how we need democracy in places like Venezuela, but they're happy trading with them anyway.
Well, there's a long story there. Like now, there's little doubt that Maduro gets some of his financing from drug trafficking. That seems to be there, but it is fairly minor. And the amount of drugs that travel through Venezuela into the United States is very small. And so you see that as far as the drug trade is concerned, it's not the biggest problem. Colombia and Bolivia are probably the biggest problems. Colombia is the one that grows and ships a lot of it. And Bolivia is another one that grows an enormous amount of it. I think also in places in Peru. So basically what they're doing is blasting out of the water cocaine. And by doing that, however, and by in association with this is the Colombian president, who is not that good either. He's kind of like a populist, and he might be on his way out. But the United States has put a lot of money into Colombia to help transition its economy away from the cocaine economy, basically. But the cocaine trade keeps going. Now, if you disrupt the area in there, you don't know what's going to happen. The biggest problem with explaining all this is comes from different politicians at different times who have tried to do the drug war thing too. And what they have found out is if you have a market, your sellers are going to find a way of getting it in. No matter how many times they've tried to block up the border or anything else, the drugs get in. There's a huge flow of fentanyl from Mexico, so why can't the U.S. border guard stop it? There's a huge flow of cocaine. So they can blast these boats out of the water for now. All it means is the cartels are going to find a different way of getting it in the United States.
Exactly, because you blast one boat out, there's another truck coming on another route, right? Yeah,
basically, and I forget the administrator that it was in one of the government. I don't know if it was the last Trump one or back in Bush's day or whatever. He pretty well said anytime they had a big, huge cocaine bust or something, he wasn't too excited by it. And when he was asked why that was, he says, if you have a market as insatiable as we do, then the smugglers are going to find a way of satisfying that market.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The biggest problem is the insatiable appetite that we in the West have for illicit drugs.
Well, and particularly in the United States. That's not to say we don't have that same issue here in Canada, but they particularly well known for having a huge market for illicit drugs in the US.
Of course, because they're a bigger country. I don't think they have any bigger market per capita than we do. And it is of issue here too is most of our cocaine in Canada, of course, comes through the United States. They had a recent big bust in Toronto of so many $1 million worth of cocaine, and that took a joint effort by the U.S. and Canada policing to get it. But the fact is, it's a drop in the barrel. And the United States is just a bigger country. It does not have a bigger problem per capita. Just because it's a bigger market, there's a bigger supply.
Yeah. All right. Economic uncertainty may continue for many years for Niagara's businesses and industry. And things are not good out there. And they're basically saying, rather than a policy like Kuzma, it feels more like we're turning on a dime, and it depends upon which side of the bed you get out of as to what kind of economic flavor you're going to get today.
Yeah, so the local businesses are very unsure of what's happening. I remember listening to the interview with on Paul K. Lemire's show when they had the Hamel Machine president or director there talking to him. His name evades me at the moment.
That's fine.
But he mentioned that when they were talking about the local businesses and what he does, he was unhappy about the tariff things and how it's going to affect his particular business. Now, Paul, of course, would never blames Trump for anything, and so anything that happens bad in Canada happens because of our politicians, and so I don't think Paul would accept that, but he didn't comment at the time.
Well, actually, the one thing though that Paul does is he allows he allows people he disagrees with to speak and say their piece.
Yes, he does, but he will not. He refuses to debate.
Yeah.
He refuses to debate, and he refuses to counter because that's his thing. He says he has his opinion. That's it. I'm not going to debate it, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And so basically, when he speaks, he sounds like a right-wing influencer a lot of the times, which is nothing wrong with that. But I think I think a balanced approach, basically, like we take the left's view and the right's view, and I've been doing that a lot lately, watching countless little videos from the right wing and the left wing on this, and all I can tell you is they're both shite. I mean, what the left is extremely petty. What the right is very cultish like and blind.
The problem is we're not getting independent and analytical viewpoints unless, of course, you go to somebody like, well, I suppose if you go to somewhere like the Financial Times, you might get that out in London.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that both the left and the right are drumming up emotional fed type of followers. So each has value in them, but you have to pick it. Like it's like they hand you walk into the buffet of Fox, and there are 1 or 2 things there that might be healthy to eat, and the rest is rubbish. But I find it's pretty much the same thing on the left wing. They usually delve into different parts of it, and even on issues like when you have intellectuals like Hanson Davis, I think that's his name, is an old guy. He's a historian. When he's left to his story, he's fine, but he's also very MAGA, and he's a very an apologist for everything that Trump does, and he even offers advice to Trump. And on the other hand, there are other intellectuals of conservatives like David Frum. David Frum is probably one of the, like, he's been a speechwriter for Bush. He's been extremely active in the conservative sphere of influence, and he himself has very contrary views to what Trump is doing and why.
Absolutely, I remember listening to his.
So if you get you have to look, if you're looking for current conservative talking guys, and I mentioned some years ago that Lori Goldstein was one of the very few conservative columnists that I liked because he was more factual rather than emotional, kind of, Yeah. So so you really do have to pick your news agencies, and anyone that is a mega person is unwilling to say anything wrong about Trump in any way possible. But the other side is equally bad a lot of the times because they dwell on petty little issues like Trump making mistakes about Albania and Azerbaijan, that kind of thing, instead of Armenia and Azerbaijan, things of that kind. So it's rather petty, and they blow that up. That doesn't do anybody any good. Stick to the facts, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah, and this economic uncertainty, well, we seem to be, as a smaller economy here in Niagara, we seem to be particularly battered by it anyway.
Well, Niagara's industries have always been very kind of tenuous.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We're on the smaller side. We don't have any great big players here who can impact the world market in any great way. So we're always caught in the middle.
Yes, we're caught in the middle. Plus, Niagara's general economy seems to be more vulnerable. At one time, the Niagara unemployment rate for the Niagara region was greater than that of Newfoundland. I remember that. very distinctly because I was unemployed at the time, and I'm thinking, how am I ever going to dig my way out of this? How am I going to get a job in this particular atmosphere?
Yeah.
So unemployment rates typically are higher in the Niagara region than there are the province otherwise. So we do have a little bit less power here. Thankfully, though, our agribusiness seems to be fairly solid and getting more solid footing. So I'm pleased about that. We have had we're getting that battery plant in Port Colborne. That's coming along, and it's mostly a reclaiming plant, I think, a battery reclaiming plant. And and we're looking going forward. The world really hasn't adjusted to the tariff regimen well yet, but it will. It has to. And right now, we buy more vehicles off from the United States than probably most of the countries of the rest of the world put together.
Yeah,
and
sure. And so, that's always been the case, of course, right?
Yeah, and so Trump complains that they don't want to buy Canadian vehicles. Well, if that's the case, then we don't want to buy American vehicles. So what will happen what happened before the auto pact in the 60s. What will happen is Canada GM will build trucks for Canadian market. US GM will build trucks for its market, and that kind of thing.
Well, it might mean you need to retool a few factories here because now your factories are going to have, it was for a point that a plant in one location would build one vehicle, and that vehicle would be spread across the US and Canada. Now you're going to have to have, a vehicle. Let's say the Ford plant in Mississauga is now going to have to build multiple types of Fords in order to satisfy the Canadian market.
Yeah, so it's because the whole thing has been set up since the Auto Pact days, even before NAFTA, in a way of the free trade zones between Canada and the U.S. Later on, Mexico kicked in, but and that motivated. Unfortunately, that also motivated a lot of American investors to start building their cars in Mexico, which is the fourth largest exporter of cars in the world, which kind of shocked me. I didn't realize it was that much. But where did that investment came? It came from Americans going there and building Fords, and even John Deere, despite the tariff hostility that Trump has dumped on John Deere. John Deere is still moving a lot of its operations into Mexico, but that is mostly to satisfy the South American and Central American markets. But the United States will not get the money for that because the machines will be built in Mexico. And no matter how much chest thumping Trump does, that's still happening. We found that Harley Davidson moved a lot of its operations to Thailand, and no matter how much threatening Trump did, that still happened. So there are things that are vulnerable out there, and I think we're going to be in a vulnerable position for a fair amount of time. We can't seem to get a deal with the U.S. right now because every time you go and you say, okay, well, we'll make a deal on this. Then once you say you've made a deal, then they say, okay, well, we're sorting through the details. Now we want more and more.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come back to some local news. So speed cameras across Ontario to be removed in 2 weeks, says Transportation Minister.
Do you think?
Well, they've passed the legislation, and on Thursday to ban the cameras, and that's what they're going ahead with.
Well,
now, I can't see it being removed. removed in those 2 weeks because there are a lot of cameras out there.
And there was a lot of contracts that were signed for these cameras, et cetera. Like, because they're not police cameras, they're private companies that put them up, I think. And they work with the police. Now, the problem here is, like Doug Ford says, it's a tax grab, and he's right about that. When they keep moving them around, you get a tax grab. But if you put them in accident-prone corners or in front of schools and parks permanently, they won't make a whole lot of money, but there are constant means by which to slow the traffic down.
Yeah.
No amounts of signs will do that, because if people think they can get through there without getting a ticket, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if like the right here in front of the school, people behave themselves much more right in Thorstone Road here. You get a lot of it's hard to turn left out of my building because you don't know the speed at which the people are coming at. Some people really kick it down, others go slow, and to be able to judge their speed.
You're in actually one of those awkward places. You're far enough away from the lights at Thorstone and Dorchester that I've started to put my foot down and accelerate away at that point, right? If I'm with the bundle of traffic or slightly ahead or something. So yeah, you're right, that's problematic. And if you've got people heading west on Thorstone, they're already built up a ton of speed anyway.
Yeah. And you have to be very, very aware. Like, there's 2 lanes going westbound. So if I'm turning into there, I'll take there'll be cars in the 1 lane, but you got to watch out when you pull in to get into the 1 lane. You have to make sure that the other persons are not changing lanes, and that's happened a few times without them signaling.
Yeah.
There's it's a difficult place to get out of a lot of the times, and that's because of volume of traffic and
yours is
the inconsistency in speed. But I've noticed since they put up the cameras there that people are behaving themselves more as long as speed wise, because the school there, and they're going to get going to get a ticket if they go too fast.
Okay. And fair argument, fair comment, and that's why you argue for them to be permanent. And I get it, because if they're permanent, we know that they're in areas where safety's top of the agenda, right?
Yeah, and so that is once the local people know that they're there and there's a possibility for getting a ticket, that is the ultimate deterrent. No amount of signs and flashing lights are going to be much of a deterrent to somebody. That if somebody's in a hurry and think they can blast through there without getting a ticket, they're going to. But the threat of a ticket is going to be the ones that stop sort of the more egregious problem drivers.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to another local story. A 4th suspect is charged in the Niagara Falls human trafficking case. So a few weeks ago, there were 2 suspects charged because these were the ones that were rounded up at the time of the issue, and the victim, an underage female, has been reinforcing the seriousness of the nature of the charges, the vulnerability of those that are targeted. And these prior arrests were 2 men and 1 woman, and there's now a 4th arrest.
Yeah, this is a sad thing. The only reason why I put that up there, because it's a crime thing, and we just don't normally.
No, we don't. But it has a serious impact upon our economy, because there's a lot of talk about how Niagara is a center of human trafficking anyway, or a transit point for human trafficking.
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be the worst area in Ontario for human trafficking, and it's very obvious because we have border here and et cetera. So we've got a lot of tourists coming and going, which means in amongst them, a small percentage of those people will have a taste for young women, I guess, or underage women.
And we also kind of, when a person's moving if a young woman's been bundled into a car or something, you kind of go, well, it's a family saying, let's get going, and we've got to get home type of thing. You kind of put innocent things on it, whereas in another town, you might not.
Well, they say that a lot of the human trafficking happens through the local hotels.
Yeah.
And they must obscure it well enough that that obviously they're not reporting it to the police. And what do you do anyway when somebody checks into a room? There's a young woman who looks like a 14 or 15-year-old girl with a man, and there are a constant flow of men going in and out of that room. What do you do? The trafficking here is almost always young women. Some of the trafficking apparently is for illegals going to work into sweatshops, things of that kind. Typically, this has been happening for a very long time, because I remember a court case when I was I think in 1967 or 66. I was a kid, and there was a court case about a Romanian girl who had been smuggled out of Romania, where I managed to escape, but then got caught up with a bunch of a prostitution ring that forced her to do the same sort of thing. But that was because she had no power and she had no recourse of where to go or what to do. And they kept threatening to expose her as an illegal.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new. And I'm not so sure the girls they traffic here, I suspect a lot of them are illegals. I'm not sure though. But
again, as an outsider, if you're seeing this going on in a hotel, you kind of go, well, maybe it's all legit.
I don't think you really notice it. I think they probably cover their tracks enough not to even
probably as well
raise an eyebrow.
Yeah, that's probably true. And the thing is, for example, going in there to, if you were that kind of person where you're going in there to, to have your jollies with a young lady, you wouldn't be checking as to whether they're trafficked or not.
I don't know, but if you're pretty well know that they're going to be underage. That once I don't know. There's for some reason there's this appeal for some men to have, the Jeffrey Epstein type.
I'm not denying that there isn't. That's a different problem though. There's trafficking of all ages, aren't there here? And I know these were
most of these are underage trafficking, as you look in this article.
Oh no, this one in this instance was under 18, but there is also a lot of trafficking even for 20-plus-year-olds.
I don't know. I haven't really seen an expose about it. I only know that there is a lot of happening here, and I believe I remember articles previous that a lot of illegals or immigrants who are on tenuous ground are the ones that most victimized. But and anyway, the whole idea of me putting it there
is basically saying we know about it, but we can't stop it.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to stop, because
I read an article a couple of years ago, and one of the things that they said in that article is human trafficking. Something like 60% of human trafficking is not for sex trade.
Well, a lot of it has to do with sweatshops and labor and that kind of thing. When I was in Nepal, they have a terrible problem of the girls in the villages being duped into coming into the cities. The best looking ones end up being hookers. The other ones get to work in the sweatshops. And when I was at a home there, for a shelter for young women that have escaped that and are trying to rebuild their lives, that was pretty much the story.
Yeah.
You are either put into a sweatshop and made to work unbelievably hard for long hours for nearly nothing, and the other girls were pushed as hookers, and they could even be pushed into other countries. But that was the problem there. And it was touching, very touching, because these young ladies had come from the villages, from very simple surroundings, and they are easily duped by talking people who says, we can find you a great job and a husband, a wealthy husband, if you come with us.
And a lot of this also comes down to the international trafficking. Brings a lot of people, you know, a lot of trafficked people to Europe, US, Canada, you know, the richer countries, if you like.
Well, I was when I was in Koh Samui, staying in a hotel there. A good section of the hotel was devoted to Russian women, Russian exotic dancers, so to speak. They were pretty much the hookers.
Yeah.
And so they were high-priced hookers there, and there was like an enormous amount of them there. But there was also the legitimate side of the hotel, I guess, which was the cover for it, where ordinary people were. Yeah. And I remember my room was right across from the long building that housed the Russian ladies. Man, they were hot, but they were also sex workers.
Yeah. Okay. And as Betty is saying, they're taken from everywhere. Absolutely, they are.
Yeah. Any exploitable female or any exploitable person, for that matter.
Not just women; it's also men as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because men could be pressed into sweatshops as well.
Well, the other thing is, remember, young men of a particular type can also become sex workers.
Yeah, that's possible too, but I don't think the demand is quite as high.
Absolutely not. But there are, you know, but I'm just saying, men of a particular type can be, right? Here, you guys have these spa shops, and all back where I come from, it's not hidden, it's right on the street. Yeah, we do have these spa shops, you know, and some of them, you're right, are not legit.
What kind of shop?
Spa.
Oh, spas. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, most of them are, but a lot of them aren't. I mean, look, there was the small topless massage parlors on Victoria Street there. There was a couple of them. And basically it was, you know, happy ending type of massages, you know. So I would suggest that, but those were adult women.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the difference here. And they were doing it to make money because that's a good way of making money for them. On the other hand, what we're talking about here in human trafficking is, you know, much more, I don't know, insidious, I think, because they're going to ruin the girl's life, basically. And I don't know, it's a launching pad for other things too. If you have human trafficking, then you probably have gun smuggling and cocaine and other drugs, that kind of thing going on. So it's one of a convenience store of crimes, I think. But anyway, we pretty well flogged that. What's next?
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, Senate voted against Trump's tariffs on Canada. Yeah, so that's
we talked about step. We talked about this a couple of days ago when the Senate voted against the tariffs Trump put on Brazil, because they didn't make any sense at all, especially when the United States had such a dominating position in that trade. They sell way more than they buy from Brazil. And it was looked as if it was a political punishment by Trump on Brazil for.
And it's the same.
We've been saying Bolsonaro.
Yeah, and we've been saying much the same about Canada, haven't we? That it's more a tactic. It's not about. It's not, you know, that essentially with Canadian products going to Canada, there's a lot more US products coming. For every dollar of Canadian products going to America, there's $100 of American products coming to Canada.
We have about a $60 billion surplus when it comes to the United States. But if you take oil out of that equation, then if there was no oil going into the United States or they replaced Canadian oil, in all other things, the United States has a huge surplus to Canada, which also doesn't make much sense for Trump trying to poach the Canadian auto jobs by saying we only want to we don't want Canadian cars. When you have pretty much Canada and U.S. car the same thing almost many times, but so those are tactics. Now the Senate has decided it's not going to put up with that, but it doesn't really have much power in this particular case. They have made these resolutions against saying they're against the tariffs of Canada, against tariffs of Brazil because they don't make a whole lot of sense. They're more political moves than they are economic moves, but Congress has decided that it will not hear any opposition to any tariff well into January. So it will not even entertain any opposition to the tariffs, even though it's supposed to be their business. Tariffs are supposed to be Congress's business, but they've handed everything over to Trump because the puppet master has told the Republicans to jump, and they're going to say how high. But some of those Republicans are beginning to cross the aisle, as they did in the Senate.
And the key factor, though, is going to happen next week when the Supreme Court hears oral arguments on whether or not Trump's use of national security statute is legal in respect to the tariffs.
Well, even the conservative stacked Supreme Court might not be able to vote in Trump's favor as they most usually want to do.
Well, this is the thing. He wanted to stack that Supreme Court in his favor, but what he's forgetting is that conservatives often vote more conservative, more traditional than Trump style conservatism.
I don't know what's going to happen here. In the Supreme Court, all I know is the Supreme Court's going to take its time coming up with any kind of pronouncement. It'll probably be months down the road.
Oh, I wouldn't mind betting it will be April or May next year before we hear that actual ruling.
Yeah, so it's quite a bit. But in the meantime, the Senate has shown us its disapproval of Trump, and you find cracks in the MAGA alliance. They also, I'm pretty sure once it goes back to Congress, you're going to get some rogue MAGA people going over to the Dem side on this one because their states are being beat up pretty bad by the tariffs. So a lot of the trade individual states that have trade partnerships with individual provinces are finding themselves getting beat up pretty bad, and you find like people from Idaho or Iowa, places like that that are farm and mining areas. They're not too happy with a lot of the tariffs.
And there's a lot of agro trade that goes both ways across these borders, right? And
but also a lot of these people were MAGA supporters.
Yeah.
Right. And because they just don't like Democrats, and I can see that they're totally, but the cracks are beginning to appear. So you're going to get Republicans in the red states balking the MAGA movement, particularly if the state feels that it is being encumbered by the tariffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's going to happen on a state-by-state basis. And it's going to be different in New York than it will be in Pennsylvania, than it will be in Michigan. et cetera, et cetera. And each of those states are going to be looking at their own trade and balance of trade and what has happened over the last months. And that's going to drive what governors and local politicians demand.
Well, look at Kentucky. Kentucky seems to have Republicans that have their own mind. They're not under the control of the puppet master as much.
Yeah.
Thomas Massey has defied AIPAC, which is the Israeli lobby. Republicans bow down to that usually, and they have defied MAGA. The Republicans that believe in a lot of what MAGA, the sort of policies of Trump, but do not believe in all of them, and so they're willing to stand up against them. So that would be like Rand Paul and McConnell as senators, and Thomas Massey as a Republican congressman, all under a whole lot of heat from MAGA, and yet they have crossed the aisle and said, we're not going to be told what to do all the time. We don't like what you're saying. But the other Republicans are very much afraid of Trump, and so they.
But you've also got some. You've also got some from other places like Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, and she's an oddity in Maine, of course, because she's the Maine number 2 rep, isn't she?
Yeah. So basically, what you do is you have a situation where there are cracks in MAGA, but still Trump has a lot of control over them because he has the fear of God over them, because he can primary them, and if that happens, they lose their cushy jobs. So see nothing, hear nothing, speak nothing is the best idea, or at least speak MAGA if you have to open your mouth and look the other way on all other things, because you're going to lose your job.
Mm-hmm.
Your nice plum job, all the benefits and all the perks.
But again, people like Rand are hard to get rid of, and Mitch McConnell, because they are very well-known Republicans.
Well, also they, as I pointed out, they came from Kentucky, and normally you would think that is a solid red state, and it probably is.
Yeah,
most of it, and both those guys are Republicans. So, but they have minds of their own. So they have confidence in their voters. They have confidence in the Kentucky voter to have a mind of its own.
Yeah.
Now in Texas, they wouldn't have a mind of their own, or Mississippi wouldn't have a mind of their own, but Kentuckians will like to have a mind of their own. And more likely, it tells me that the Kentuckies are more independent thinkers and don't really go with the wave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
at all times.
Yeah, and so nothing is certain within both the Senate and the House at the moment.
No, it won't. It won't. Even if it does go through, then it could get vetoed. So even if it passes in the House in January, because MAGA Mike Johnson won't let anything be spoken of the tariffs until at least January. So nothing can be proposed there to oppose the tariffs until January, or nothing. And even if the Congress approves it and the Senate approves, well, the Senate's already approved an anti-tariff thing against Canada and Brazil. Once it reaches the desk of the president, he can veto it.
Yeah.
But it does show cracks, and it is an indication that during the midterms, you might not only get more Democrats, but we might get more Republicans that will not fall in line.
And it's because there's a lot of basically Canadian. There's a lot of Americans that buy Canadian products that don't even know what they're using is Canadian product.
Well, yeah, it of course here too. I don't know what is from the U.S. or not.
With a large amount, unless you pick it up and look at the made in label, you don't know. you've got probably many things in your house that you consider to be Canadian, but if you pick it up and look at the made in label, you'll see made in America.
Look, if I need an electric motor for an air conditioner, I go get an electric motor for an air conditioner.
Yeah, and it probably comes from the US.
Well, yeah, you want the good ones from the United States. I had that problem with an air conditioner once, my house air conditioner. It kept quitting, and I was the one that figured it out. The technicians are daft; they couldn't figure it. I kept having them come back, and they couldn't discover it because it was an intermittent problem.
Yeah,
what it was Chinese motor. As soon as they put an American motor in, never another problem.
Yeah, exactly, that type of thing. And and it's one of those situations whereby the motor's either made in America or made in China, right?
Well, nowadays more and more of them are made in China because they're getting better and better at it. So you're getting a lot less junk coming out of China, and that's because China are a controlled economy. But you know what? Before we go, we're getting close to the end, and we had an argument earlier about computing and computing power and AI, and you said that computers
you didn't give me any sources. You gave me a diatribe, but you didn't give me any sources.
That's not my diatribe. That comes right off the computer. So when I searched it, this is what it says. It says the massive power demands of artificial intelligence data centers are significantly driving up power prices for both businesses and consumers. The explosive growth of AI is straining power grids and that were not designed for the level of energy consumption, prompting utilities to build new infrastructure and raise wholesale and retail electricity rates to cover the costs. How AI increases power prices, intensive energy needs. AI workloads, especially for training huge language models, require far more power than traditional computing tasks. A single query to a generative AI chatbot can consume up to 10 times more electricity than a standard internet research. Rapid growth of data centers, the International Energy Agency, IEA, projects that the global electricity demand from data centers will more than double between 2022 and 2030, with AI being the primary driver.
Yeah,
and I can go on like that. You get the idea.
The drive for data centers has been going on. The drive to improve and increase the amount of availability of data centers has been going on for at least 15 years, maybe in fact probably much of the last 20 years, because we now use more and more cloud infrastructure rather than we don't have any local computing power except for our local computers. Everything we have is on the cloud.
My point was a few days ago that AI will be the driver of the upcoming economy, and the power demands of AI will be incredible, as pointed out by this that I took off the internet.
Again,
you can find articles. I did come up with articles, but they're ones that you had to pretty well subscribe to get them. So I didn't put them on because if you tried to open them, you probably wouldn't be able to. But you can find this out independently easily. The AI demands for power are one of the things that may stop the U.S. from developing more aluminum because of the high price of aluminum power. It costs an incredible amount of power. Yeah. And
that's what works in Quebec's favor. That's what works in Quebec's favor with the aluminium smelting.
Yeah, they have enormous amounts of hydropower and more coming from Newfoundland with the deals they've struck with them. So you have a lot of my point the other day, which you balked at, and you said computing power is becoming less and less. It's the massive amount of computing power that is going to be enormous strain on the power grid, and this is so you're going to have a lot of accelerated power stations coming up to supply that. And the U.S., who is the main driver of AI, are going to find the power needs that are going to be huge. And we've already found a huge spike in power prices anywhere around a data center. So the poor saps that live close to it are going to find their power prices really skyrocket in some cases. So power consumption of AI data centers are going to be a big problem. Now, we heard about like crypto, like Bitcoin, like for instance, even one coin, Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies also use an incredible amount of power. We've discussed that on the show before, whereas cryptocurrency may or may not be the currency of the future, certainly moving that way, but it takes an enormous amount of power to keep it going because crypto relies on blockchains, which all require computing power all over the world.
Well, the blockchains, of course, are a worldwide thing. You can't bundle them up and put them in one place.
That's right. So it's worldwide. It's a worldwide energy drain, and I would also mention here that NVIDIA, who are making
NVIDIA is a display company. Dave? I think we've lost Dave. Dave? Looks like we've lost Dave. Don't want to keep dead air there, but well, first of all, let's make sure. Welcome everybody, and first of all, if you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe, and if you're watching us on Facebook, also like and follow, and follow us on Facebook. All right. I don't know what's happened today, but it looks like he's disappeared off. He's probably, he's lost the link. So we're calling it a day right now. Okay. All right. So thank you everybody for being here on our Spooky Friday. I'm going to sign off with some Halloween style stuff, and say thank you to everybody and have a great day. And we will see you Monday, and I will actually not be here on Tuesday, so welcome and see you Monday, and have a great weekend and rest.